Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. Today I'm discussing 10 films that have at least, but not limited to, one really great scene. A scene that just almost can overshadow the movie because it's so good. A scene that makes the movie what it is, maybe. A powerful scene. And I'm going to talk around spoilers, that way if you haven't seen one of these, it won't give away too much that it'll hurt your opinion of the film or your enjoyment of the film. And the first of these is one that I always like to point out when I can, because it's such a unique claymation film, and it's such a dark, twisted piece of media in this one scene. Years ago, whenever YouTube was younger, and when I was younger, there was this disturbing claymation thing you could click on, and it had all these views, deeply disturbing, banned, children's, blah, blah, blah. And it was this scene from this movie called The Adventures of Mark Twain, a claymation story where all these different little kids end up on this big vessel that Mark Twain, the author, is taking to do some harakiri. You know what I mean? And part of his despair is kind of symbolized and personified by this creature, this mysterious stranger. And a stranger greets these children, asks them what kind of fruits they would like the most, and has them create this fun little village out of clay. And then it does some creepy things. Absolutely twisted, mean piece of animation. Gosh, like, I've never gotten over it. Just sitting here thinking about it gives me the willies, you know. The Adventures of Mark Twain. I don't want to give away what happens, but some of y'all are going to love that. You're going to walk away from this video and you're going to say, oh, I'm so glad I at least looked up that clip, because that is crazy. So if you've seen it, let me know in the comments, all right? Number 2 is actually what kind of inspired this video. Now, I love this little film, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya. Kaguya. I just watched this. I've had this steelbook for a little while. Love these steelbooks from Studio Ghibli. They're just amazing. So pretty. And this is the story of a princess who is literally, it's such a mythological tale because this woodcutter is out messing around with some bamboo, and he finds this small child in a tree, and then takes the child out, and it grows very quickly and becomes this princess, sort of. And there's a sequence where this princess is in her palace, right? Which you would, not trying to spoil there, but she's a princess, so. And there's a running scene in that film. So if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. When all of the animation goes into this wonderful blur of jarring, despicable, elegant horror, where this character cannot escape exactly, but kind of does. It almost looked to me like that scene like something out of some old German silent epic like Faust, which I sometimes refer to on this channel. It's so creepy, and it's so pretty. It's really good, okay? If you haven't seen this, you'll know the scene I'm talking about whenever you get to it. And it's just like fluid, gorgeous animation. And all of this really works well because of the watercolors. It's good for that like mythological vibe, because there's not this stringent set of rules about how things have to look with neat, tight corners. Another film I wanted to talk about here. Film I'm going to push, because this is actually one of my favorite films of the 2000s. And I'll probably be dying alone on this hill, because I think I like this movie quite a bit better than a lot of folks do. It's a found footage film. I think it's really good for what it is. It's called Willow Creek. It's 2013. I'm looking everywhere for a copy of this thing. Like when I go to our little like local media store, I'm always looking for a DVD, because the Blu-rays are really expensive. And it's not much of a film. It's just this couple is out in California at this place called Willow Creek, where supposedly there was Bigfoot, and they're looking for Bigfoot evidence, and they're documenting it Blair Witch style. But there is a scene in this film that I can't remember if it's like 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 13 minutes. It's this long extended scene where they're in a tent. Okay, this couple's in a tent. And that is some of the spookiest, most anxiety-producing horror. Like, don't watch this film before you go to the outdoors, okay? Like, don't even watch this before you go to a nature park, because that scene in that tent is fabulously directed. I think that particular scene holds up to like some of the truly great films in terms of like execution of the filmmaker and director. It's that good. Now you can argue the success of the whole film. I actually happen to like it quite a bit because I think that relationship between those two characters is subtle and believable, but some people don't love that. They wanted more like, they wanted a little bit more of the like spookiness as it went along with Blair Witch, but I think it's just a good piece of storytelling. So, telling you got to see the tent scene. But the only way the tent scene works is if you see the whole movie. So like The Adventures of Mark Twain, even if you only saw that one scene, it would be worth watching. But I do think for Willow Creek, you really need to see the whole thing. Okay. Now there's this scene. I've been. You know what? I think this might be the funniest scene in a movie I've ever seen. So I wanted to talk about it because it's so funny. Okay. I have this friend I used to work with who told me, Cody, you got to see In Bruges. Okay, so we talked about it. I eventually bought it. And I really like this movie. I think it's hilarious, by the way, if you haven't seen it. Colin Farrell, Brendan Gleeson, Ralph Fiennes. And there's a phone call in this. Sorry, I need to tell you a little bit about the plot if you don't know. Gangsters are hiding out in a city. Assassins are hiding out in a city. They're lying low, and then they're supposed to be doing something. And okay, so they're lying low. There's this phone call to this crime boss, played by Ralph Fiennes, all right? So he gets this phone call with some news about something. Remember, I'm talking around spoilers, but you know what I'm talking about if you've seen this film, right? So he gets this phone call, and it's a disappointing phone call, to say the least. In fact, it's almost difficult to decide which side of the phone you want to be on for that phone call because it's so entertaining. And he takes the phone, and this whole dialogue unfolds. I almost crack up just thinking about it because he's so disappointed and frustrated. And that scene and his reaction to that call and what happens with his wife and just that small little scene, funniest thing I think I've ever seen in a movie. Gosh. I had the fortune of rewatching that clip again for YouTube. It's not a very long moment in the whole film, and there are plenty of good, humorous, dark comedy moments. And really, the thing about that clip is it ties all the themes together. And again, I can't really talk about many of them because I would be spoiling the phone call, but it just works. The whole thing's a great black comedy. All right, opposite of that, let's talk about something slow and poetic, maybe even kind of melancholy. And real pretty movie. I got a 4K, not a 4K. This is a Canadian Blu-ray maybe of Hero with Jet Li. This assassin is coming before the king to tell him about three-ish kills he's made, I believe. It's been a while since I've seen this, but I always remember this moment. One of the fights he's in, Jet Li, he has to fight another fighter played by Donnie Yen, Ip Man. Tremendous actors, both of them, tremendous martial artists. And right there you have one of the great martial art pairings. Besides Jet Li versus Sammo Hung and Ip Man 2, which I frequently refer to because I love that. This thing, okay? That fight, there's like some music in the background, and then the person playing the instrument sort of indirectly gets involved, and there's like rain, and there's a battle within a battle. And the choreography and the visuals, it's stunning. It's awesome to look at. And to me, it's the best part of that movie by a lot, even though the whole movie's really pretty because those two actors have that screen presence. And gosh, if you love martial arts or like fighting movies, this is top notch. Hero. And whenever I was just like listing out, okay, what are movies with one great scene? This one I think was like the second one I thought of. Like, remember that time that Donnie Yen fought Jet Li in that gorgeous piece of cinematography? What was it? Oh, Hero. Yeah. Saw that movie, one of the first non-English movies I was able to see in a theater. I saw that with a group of college students one weekend when I was a senior in high school. Had no idea what it was about. Blew me away at the time. Still love it. All right. Next up, a film that I think I've got a 4K of it. I might even get a collector's edition of it. I don't know. Where did I put my copy of Casino? Y'all ever seen Casino? Rob De Niro, Joe Pesci. So Casino is a whole story about how Robert De Niro, his character Ace Rothstein, is going to be overseeing a casino because he's so good at gambling. And his buddy Nicky Santoro is going to, his buddy-ish, okay? Buddy Light, not Bud Light, Buddy Light, is going to help him out, kind of watch over him. And it's about how, he's such a good gambler and he's going to watch this casino over. And the actual exposition in that film, the opening few scenes, after there's like a car bombing, and then after that there's like an explanation of how Rothstein took over, why he took over, why he was good at gambling, like the specifics, who Nicky was. Like, it's such a strong piece of exposition. It makes great use of music that Scorsese always does. I think it's one of his best pieces, if maybe not his best piece of exposition outside of Goodfellas. But it is just a tremendous long scene where we get this great background for these characters. And I have often thought, like, that part of Scorsese's career is just like such a miracle. Like, I've watched it, like, I've have to have watched the opening of Casino like 50 times because it's so good. So Casino, I need to find my copy or get a new one. If you have a recommended version of Casino, let me know, because I just have a boring regular 4K and I love that movie, so I kind of want to upgrade it to something boutique, All right. What about if you have a group of actors and they're all good actors. You got Ed Harris, you got Jack Lemmon, you got everybody. But of all the people who steals the show and has the best scene, it's not Al Pacino, okay? It's not Jack Lemmon. It's not Kevin Spacey. It's not any of those guys. It's Alec Baldwin and his character in Glengarry Glen Ross. Real classic piece of, stage to screen. And he's talking to they're in this office. He's talking to these hustlers, these land selling hustlers, about how much they suck at selling land. And it is like he's so mean to them, okay? There's the famous line, coffee is for closers, because he doesn't want, Jack Lemmon's character to have coffee because he's too weak for coffee. I mean, the guy's evil, and it's hilarious. And it's just done with such a minimal amount of, like, everything. I mean, it's just one dude yelling at a bunch of dudes, and it's hilarious. Glengarry Glen Ross. That scene defined that movie. And everything else after that's good, but it's just like, I mean, how do you top that scene? All right, Western fans, I got two for you. Every chance I get on my channel, I like to plug one of my favorite, most underrated Westerns, Old Henry. Now, if you watch my channel and you ever hear me talk about Westerns and you haven't seen Old Henry, you're missing a treat, okay? Because this has Tim Blake Nelson as Old Henry, just this old dude trying to live a peaceful life on a farm. A dead body shows up, and then Western stuff happens. There's gunfire, shootouts, there's a lot of talking. It's kind of slow at times, and it might look kind of cheap with that slipcover. It's not. It's a real good movie. However, and you'll know what I'm talking about if you've seen the movie, there is a moment in the last few scenes. It's this whole scene where we learn this fact, this important fact. And if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And once we learn this fact and all of what happens around that scene, it becomes one of the great moments in Western history because it's so reverent of the genre, and it's just so satisfying. Aren't the best Westerns really satisfying? Like, they have that one moment where you just feel like riding a horse or going on a hike through the Grand Canyon or brooding. Yeah. I love Old Henry. Gosh, it's so good. I showed it to my dad and he fell asleep during it, but you should see it. All right. Another Western. This is not Django Unchained, it's Django. This is one of the really good 4Ks from Arrow. A spaghetti Western. A mysterious loner arrives at a bud-drenched ghost town, and he's dragging a coffin. And there's this whole, you know, I don't know, you could call it like, well, I'm trying not to spoil it. Let's say that he has a coffin. And there's a scene in Django where we find out what's in that coffin. So that's all I'm going to say about it if you haven't seen it. Django, dude has just an awesome outfit, look, style, and he drags a coffin around. And when you find out what's in the coffin and what he does with it, great moment in Western history. I mean, it's iconic. There's nothing like it. And it looks really good in the 4K. This is hard to do spoiler-free because I'm thinking about those two scenes beside each other, you know? And it's just real satisfying. All right, one more. Number 10. Now, this movie's probably like the worst movie on this list, but not all the parts. So this is a really uneven movie. And I mean, like, there are some scenes that are really, really bad. So if you have ever learned about the Odyssey or read it in class, maybe you did it in high school, maybe you did it in college, there's a chance that the person teaching that to you showed you at least part of the 1997 TV series. Because there was a TV series. And I brought this film up because I know Christopher Nolan's making his version of it, which I think will be good for him. I think that's about the range I would want Christopher Nolan, that kind of project. So, The Odyssey. A man fights a war and tries to get home. It's like, what, the blueprint of half the stories out there. And on his way home, he gets home, and there's a scene in his old palace. And if you've seen The Odyssey or read it, you're going to know what I'm talking about. Odysseus in the palace, when he comes home, and he's there in the palace, that scene in that 97 movie, a movie that has Christopher Lee, by the way, as Tiresias, and it has all these other actors. I can't think of them all offhand. And has some, Isabella Rossellini's in it. Yeah, as Athena. It has all these good actors, but it has some truly awful special effects, and some of the acting is awful. Like, it's just very uneven. But when he actually gets to the palace, that whole scene is like one of the best build-ups. Like, it's so satisfying. So if you're a fan of The Odyssey, and you haven't watched the 97 palace scene, at least watch that. There's also a funny scene with the Cyclops in there. I really like this story. I'm sure whenever Christopher Nolan makes it, it'll be like more sophisticated, you know, and it won't be as campy as this version was. Hopefully it'll have some personality to it also. But this scene from the 97 version, the palace, I mean, it's only a few minutes, but it is satisfying. And the last few I have are all like kind of more satisfying toward the end of the film. So those are just 10 films that I felt like had a good, really memorable scene in them. And if you like the content and found any of this enjoyable, if you want to click the like button, that'll help grow the channel. Consider subscribing if you haven't. I cover a lot of different movie topics. You know, I cover Criterions, Westerns, different stuff. Sometimes I do these specialty videos as well. What are some that you have seen that you wanted to say, all right, Cody, there's this one really good scene. Like, maybe it's a bad movie, but there's one good scene. I like that too, you know? Because there were movies that I had in mind that were like, had one good scene, but they were so bad that I almost just didn't want to talk about them. But if you have something in mind, let me know in the comments, and we'll see you next time on Cody in the Cinema.